If you're looking for the ultimate travel camera, I think this might be it. The Sony A6700 is a fantastic APS-C camera that comes in a small, lightweight body, but still packs a serious punch, rivaling some of Sony's full-frame cameras. And having used the Sony A6700 for travel photography, YouTube videos, client work, and photography tours around Cyprus, I keep coming back to the same conclusion. This might be the perfect travel camera for creators, and for most people, the only camera you'll ever need. In this video, I'll show you why the Sony A6700 is so good, where it falls short, and why I think this is one of the best travel cameras you can buy today. When people talk about travel cameras, they usually talk about image quality, which is important, but when you're actually traveling, image quality is only part of it. A good travel camera needs to be small enough to carry all day, comfortable enough that you actually want to use it, and reliable enough that it doesn't get in the way, and powerful enough for both photo and video. Because the best camera in the world is useless if it just ends up staying in your hotel room, and that's where the Sony A6700 gets a lot right. One of the biggest advantages of the Sony A6700 is that it disappears into your travel experience, and that matters more than people think. When I'm traveling, I don't want a camera setup that takes over my whole bag or makes me think twice about bringing it with me. I want something small enough to easily fit in my bag, leave room for other lenses or accessories, and not feel like I'm carrying a full production setup all day. The Sony A6700 comes in under 500 grams with a battery and a memory card. So compared to a lot of full frame setups, it feels much easier to carry around for long periods. And that makes a massive difference when you're walking through mountain villages, exploring old towns, or spending a full day shooting. It also means I can keep the setup simple. If I want to travel light, I can just bring a small 10-litre sling, the A6700 with 1 or 2 lenses, and I'm good to go. But size is the only part of it. Compared to some of Sony's older APS-C cameras, the grip on the 6700 feels much better. It's deeper and more comfortable. And if you have larger hands, it gives you more confidence when holding the camera. That sounds like a small thing, but when you're carrying a camera all day, comfort matters. Because if a camera is annoying to carry, eventually you stop bringing it out. And for travel photography, that is the worst thing that can happen. The A6700 gets this balance right. It's compact, lightweight, comfortable, and easy to carry all day. And despite the smaller size of this camera, Sony still managed to pack in some serious power into this camera, which makes a massive difference when traveling. For photography, the Sony A6700 has a 26 megapixel sensor, which I think is a really nice sweet spot for travel photography. It gives you plenty of resolutions for detailed travel photos, cropping, printing, and editing in Lightroom, but the files are not so huge that they eat up all your storage. The image quality is excellent, the dynamic range is strong, and for an APS-C camera, the low light performance is very good. So if you're someone who likes shooting when the sun starts to go down, capturing evening streets, restaurants, hotels, or a different side of a place when you travel, the Sony A6700 can absolutely handle it. But where this camera becomes even more impressive is video. The A6700 shares a lot of its DNA with the Sony FX30, which is Sony's cinema-focused APS-C camera, and you feel that when you start filming with it. This is not just my travel photography camera, it's also one of my main cameras I use for YouTube videos, B-roll, and client work. It can shoot 4K up to 120 frames per second, which even some older Sony frame cameras cannot do. It has 5-axis in-body stabilization, which is useful if you shoot handheld like I do. It can record 10-bit 4:2 color, which gives you so much better files to work with compared to basic 8-bit cameras. And it gives you a proper picture profile like S-Log3 and even S-Cinetone. If you like color grading and want maximum flexibility, S-Log3 gives you a lot to work with in post. But honestly, when I'm traveling, I don't want to spend hours behind a desk editing. I want to spend more time outdoors actually creating, and that's why I use S-Cinetone a lot. If you're documenting your travels, filming YouTube videos, or capturing simple client projects, S-Cinetone gives you a really nice image straight out of camera without needing a heavy grade. And if you're filming hotels, restaurants, tourism projects, or anything where you need more control, S-Log3 is there when you need it. That's what makes the Sony A6700 so useful. It's not just a good photography camera, it's a proper hybrid camera that can handle serious photo and video work in a small body. At this point, you could argue that the camera does pretty much everything, but all that power only matters when it can keep up with real travel moments. And that's where autofocus becomes the biggest reason I trust the Sony A6700. Autofocus is something Sony cameras are known for, and on the A6700 it feels fast, reliable and intelligent. And when you're traveling, things happen quickly. People walk through a frame, light changes, a street moment appears for a split second, a car passes, an animal moves, something interesting happens and it's gone. In those situations, I don't want to fight the camera. The A6700 has Sony's AI processing chip, subject recognition autofocus, and the Bion Z XR processor, which helps the camera recognize and track different subjects more accurately. It can detect humans, animals, birds, insects, cars, trains, planes, which makes it useful for a lot of different travel situations. Whether I'm shooting street photography, details around the village, events, wildlife, or filming myself for YouTube, the autofocus removes a lot of stress. You can also adjust things like autofocus transition speed and subject shift sensitivity, which is really useful for video. So if you want the camera to smoothly move focus between subjects, you can set it up that way. And if you want more creative control, you can still switch to manual focus and do your own focus pulls for a more cinematic look. But most of the time, the reason I like the autofocus on our camera is simple. I can trust it. And when you're traveling, that matters, because it means you spend less time fighting your camera and more time actually creating. And because the A6700 is such a capable hybrid camera, Sony made another smart decision. They gave it the bigger Z battery. Because the A6700 has the larger grip, Sony was able to fit in the bigger battery. That's the same Z battery used in many of Sony's full-frame cameras, and for travel, that makes a big difference. Battery anxiety is one of the worst things when traveling. The last thing you want when walking around a village or exploring a new city, or on a full day shooting and having to constantly worrying about whether your camera is going to die. The good news is the A6700 performs surprisingly well. For most normal travel days, I could shoot comfortably without constantly reaching for a spare battery. That said, I still like to carry a couple of spares with me, especially if I'm out for a long day exploring Cyprus, filming video, or switching between photography and YouTube content. I also try to rotate my batteries so each one gets used, and I always make sure I have a charger with me just in case. It's not that you'll ever need a spare battery, but compared to some of Sony's older APS-C cameras, the A6700 feels more reliable for a full day of travel. And that's exactly what you want from a travel camera. Something small enough to carry, powerful enough to create with, and practical enough that you're not constantly worrying about the basics. But the camera body is only part of the setup. What really makes the A6700 powerful for travel is the lens system around it. A camera setup is only as good as the lenses available for it. And that's where Sony has a huge advantage, because the A6700 is not locked into one type of setup. You have lens options from Sony, Sigma, Tamron, Viltrox, and plenty of other brands, which means you can build the camera around the way you actually shoot. If you want to keep things small and lightweight, there are compact APS-C lenses. If you want something ultra wide for landscapes, architecture, portraits, vlogging, or tight streets, you have options. And that flexibility matters because travel photography is not just one thing. Sometimes you want to walk around with a small setup and barely notice the camera is there. Other times you want more serious lens that gives you a better image quality, flexibility, and a more professional look. Now for my own setup, I actually use the Sigma 24-70 f2.8, which is a full frame lens. Now that does make my setup a little bigger, and I wouldn't call this my smallest possible travel kit. But for the way I shoot, it gives me a useful range, strong image quality, and flexibility for taking travel photos, YouTube videos, and client work. And that's one of the reasons I like the Sony system. You can keep it small with APS-C lenses, or you can use the full frame E-mount lenses if you want something more serious or if you plan to move to full frame later. For example, if your priority is to keep the setup small as possible, lenses like the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 or the Sigma 17-40 f1.8 are the kind of APS-C lenses that I would be looking at. I don't currently own those two, but hopefully in future. but on paper they make a lot of sense for someone building a lightweight A6700 travel setup. And that is the real strength of this camera system, because you can build a small setup, you can build a serious setup, or you could build something in between. The camera doesn't force you into one way of shooting. That flexibility allows you to build a travel kit around your style, rather than forcing yourself into a setup that looks good on paper that's annoying to carry in the real world. If you're finding this video helpful, I'd really appreciate if you can give this video a like, because it helps other photographers and travelers discover this channel. And subscribe for more real-world travel photography videos, gear reviews, and experiences in Cyprus. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments, what's your current travel photography setup, and would you switch to the Sony A6700? This is actually the camera I'm using to film this video, which probably says a lot. Beyond the headline specs, there are a few smaller features that make the A6700 much nicer to use day to day. The first one is memory presets. I love being able to set up custom modes for photo, video, and slow motion, then switch between them instantly using the dial. When you're traveling, that saves so much time. You might be taking photos 1 second and then filming a quick video clip the next, then switching into slow motion for some B-roll. Instead of diving through menus every time, the camera is already set up how I like it. The custom buttons are another big one. I can quickly access things like focus peaking, anti-flicker settings, subject recognition, or whatever else I need without slowing myself down. Then you have creative looks, which I use a lot when I want a nice looking JPEG straight out camera without spending ages editing. The tilty flippy screen is also really useful, especially for YouTube, low angle shots, vertical content, or filming yourself when traveling. And I know I already mentioned the grip, but it really does make the camera nicer to hold. It feels more secure than some of the older Sony APC bodies, especially if you have larger hands. I've even used it for motorsport photography, and it handled that without any issues, which says a lot for a small APC camera. These are not always the features people talk about first, but they are the things that make the camera easier to live with. And when you're traveling, that matters, because a travel camera should not just have good specs, it should make shooting easier. Before I give my final thoughts, let me talk to you about a few drawbacks, because no camera is perfect. And the Sony A6700 does have a few compromises, which is worth knowing about before you buy one. The first is this single SD card slot. For most travel photography, YouTube videos, and casual creator work, that probably is not a deal breaker. But if you're shooting weddings, paid events, or anything where the file backup is critical, dual card slots would obviously be safer. The second is the micro HDMI port. It works, but I would much rather have a full-size HDMI port, especially if you ever rig the camera up for video work. The screen is also not perfect. It is useful, especially for filming yourself, but I will not fully judge your final image from the screen alone. And then there is overheating. The A6700 can overheat during longer recordings, especially in hotter environments. And if you're filming in a place like Cyprus during the summer, that is something you need to be aware of. For short clips, travel videos, B-roll, photography, and mixed shooting, I personally have been fine. But if you're planning to record long talking head videos or continuous interviews, you should know the limitation. None of these things ruin the camera, but they do stop the camera from being perfect. For most travel creators, these aren't deal breakers, but they are worth knowing before you buy one. Now, if you do decide to pick up the Sony A6700, there are a few accessories that make this camera even better for both photo and video. For photography, I'll start with a good memory card and an ND filter and some step-up rings. A good memory card is obvious but important. You don't want to cheap out on the thing storing your photos or videos. An ND filter is really useful if shooting in bright conditions, especially somewhere like Cyprus where the sun can be harsh. Maybe you want to do some creative shots like slower shutter speeds. And step-up rings can save you money because they let you use larger filters across different lens sizes instead of having to buy separate filters for every lens. For video, I'd recommend a few more things. A small rig cage is useful if you want to attach a microphone, a monitor, a handle, or other accessories. It also gives the camera extra protection if you have an accident. Plus, you get a second grip point, which is nice. A V60 or a V90 SD card is worth getting if you want to use the higher video settings. For some of the more demanding modes, especially in S&Q 10-bit, a V90 card is needed. Peak Design anchors or a Peak Design capture clip are also great for travel because they make carrying the camera much easier. Now, if you film long videos in hot environments, a cooling fan can be useful. And if you're filming YouTube videos, travel content or client work, a good microphone will make a big difference than most people think. None of these accessories are essential on day one, but they do help improve the overall experience. Just don't make the mistake of turning a small travel camera into a serious rig unless you actually need to. The strength of the Sony A6700 is that it can stay simple. As much as I like this camera, I don't think it's for everyone. If you're someone that mainly shoots long interviews, weddings or events, and dual card slots are essential, then this isn't the safest choice. And if you're someone that films long takes in hot environments, overheating is something that you need to think about. And if you own a full frame camera and you're happy in carrying it around, then you don't really need to switch. But if you want a compact travel camera for photography, video, YouTube, creative work, the Sony A6700 makes a lot of sense. So is the Sony A6700 the only camera you need for travel? For most creators, honestly, yes. It delivers excellent image quality, excellent video quality, has great battery life, a reliable autofocus system, and access to one of the best lens ecosystems available today. In some situations, I'd even recommend this over some of Sony's older full-frame counterparts. And that's why it makes this camera such an easy recommendation. And if you ever visit Cyprus and you want to explore the island through travel photography, I've left a link in the description box down below. I've also included a free photo spots guide for inspiration. Now, if you want to see how I set up the 6700 for travel photography, check this video out here. Otherwise, YouTube recommends this video next. I'll see you in Cyprus soon.